In a country that consistently issues xenophobia and colonialism as the norm, recognizing differences within community groups is so critical. The isolation that can be felt by these communities when the people surrounding them are inhospitable can be so overwhelming. Teaching students to understand these feelings through stories told allows them to empathize with discriminated communities and recognize the consequences of others and their own actions. Following this, you will see students discussing their lesson plans and how they best believe these pieces of literature can benefit the students who are taught them.
Jessica Hogdorne is a Filipino American author, singer, and songwriter who was born in 1949 and raised in the Philippines. She moved to San Francisco at the age of 14 and became the protege of poet and translator Kenneth Rexroth. Her youth in the Philippines greatly inspired her love for reading and writing. Her writing, much like her music, embodies the themes of rage, passion, rebellion, yearning, and alienation. These themes are ones that can be found throughout many of her works and bleed into many immigrant tales. In her short story, The Blossoming of Bong Bong, her main character Bong Bong is in search of a place of belonging and a place of community. There's a disconnect in his life, and he tries to fill it with people around him. He tries to create a community of his own, full of bright characters and culture. He has a group of people for who, with a short time, he's found a family. He establishes bonds with them and enjoys their company. He begins to establish a sense of self through the community of people around him. However, through the course of the story, the people in his life begin to abandon him, and by the end, he has lost all sense of self and all sense of identity. He signs his last letter to his friend Frascetto simply with the word love, omitting his name entirely, unlike in previous letters when this community abandons him. He loses all sense of individuality and identity.
Hi, my name is Imani Spence, and I wrote the lesson plan about Carlos Bulosan's America is in the Heart, which was originally published in 1943 and served as a representative text about Filipino American struggles with immigration, labor rights, and xenophobia in California. Bulasan is a very prolific writer who worked considerably in labor organizing as well as poetry throughout his life. Growing up, he lived in Seattle in America and also lived around the Philippines as a child. In America is in the Heart, Bulasan uses anecdotes and stories from other Filipino Americans, as well as his own life, to create a semi-autobiographical novel that characterizes how Filipino Americans were feeling during a time of major upheaval in both America as well as the Philippines. Using the Filipino-American War as well as the World War II as contextualizing points, this lesson plan helps students consider what they believe to be helpful and useful about America today. For example, there is a Think, Pair, Share, which focuses on an excerpt from the piece that asks, why does it feel like it was a crime to be Filipino in California during this time? The goal with this lesson plan is that students are able to learn the impact of Carlos Bulasan's writing on the Filipino-American representation, as well as identify political statements that Bulasan was making, and begin to construct their own ideas for the future of America and how they relate to them.
Hi, my name is Danny Dyer, and I've prepared a lesson plan regarding Jeannie Baroga, a prolific playwright who has been writing plays since 1981. Many of her works deal in exploring Filipino and Filipino-American history, exploring connections and community, and finding solidarity in the presence and actions of other people of color. Her play, Walls, interrogates what it means to navigate the dual identities of being Asian and American. The play has been awarded an NEA Access to Artistic Excellence Award and engages with themes of racial and political tension and how that impacts the Asian American community within the framework of the events surrounding the installation of the Vietnam Memorial in Washington, D.C. The play was first produced in 1989, only 7 years after the construction of the memorial. By analyzing the narrative of the play, students are able to identify the impact of culture wars and xenophobia, while also engaging with broader concepts regarding cultural identity and American colonialism.
Bienvenido Santos, in his short story Manila House, that is a part of a collection of short stories, discussed the unrest his peers and he felt during the 1940s, when many of them were recruited to fight for the United States during World War II. Many Filipino Americans lived in DC and would hear around them why the citizenship bill that they were waiting for was being blocked or what was the cause of delaying it. This unrest meant that they were consistently waiting on pens and needles for the next piece of news. Their anxiety that they felt could easily be comparable to today's news stories regarding citizenship status of immigrants from all over the world. This story ended up becoming a literary landmark for the Manila House in Washington, D.C., where Filipino Americans were able to gather and discuss and find a community where they previously were unable to.
Louisia Igloria is an accomplished poet who has written 14 books of poetry and 4 chapbooks. She is originally from the Philippines and earned her PhD in English and Creative Writing from the University of Illinois at Chicago as a Fulbright Fellow. She is now local to the DMV area as the Poet Laureate of Virginia. She writes about a variety of topics, including nature, family, and personal experiences. Since November 20th, 2010, Louisa has been writing at least one poem every day for her daily writing project.